Nigel Farage, there are less than 6 months to go to the European elections. What's the platform of the Independence Democracy Group and what are your priorities?
Over the years here, there have been a variety of Eurosceptic groups, all fairly loose associations. Since 2004, we've had the INDEM group, the Independence and Democracy Group, and we've said to ourselves, we are the voice of opposition within this Parliament, and by George, we have been. We're not only opposed to the Lisbon Treaty, we are opposed to the imposition of a political union of Europe upon the peoples of Europe without them endorsing it. And that's what we've been all about.
And where's the illegal part of all of this?
Oh, I think the twisting, the fact that the European Constitution was vetoed, was shot down by the French and Dutch people, and that should have been the end of the matter, legally, according to their own treaties. But of course they, in a most dishonest way, rebrand it as a Lisbon Treaty. They bring it back. They do their best not to have referendums. They, of course, had to have one in Ireland. That killed the whole thing. But still they continue. Still they continue. They're doing it. They're breaking their own rules, and they're treating the European voters like mugs.
All right, that's your platform. Let's look at the prospects for the group as a whole. The fact of the matter is that Euroscepticism, if you like, is growing around Europe. Surely some of the bigger parties are now basically stealing your best lines. Come voting day, people are going to vote for a big group rather than a small group.
Oh, that they were! Oh, that they were! If the big established political parties were to take all of our clothes and were to stand up in France and in Germany and in Britain and in Italy and all across the European Union and to say, vote for us, send us back to Strasbourg and Brussels, and we will get powers back to national governments, we will change this kind of European Union.
What's the difference between a Eurosceptic and a Euro-realist?
Listen, there are two distinct positions within the Eurosceptic stroke Euro-realist stroke EU opponent wing. One view is the view that UKIP holds, which is that after 30 years of British engagement, of trying to reform things and change things, we have to recognise that that argument's a busted flush, and therefore it's better to divorce ourselves politically and to renegotiate a free trade agreement. That's one strand, and one strand of the INDEM group as well. The other strand is to say no, whilst we agree that things aren't right, whilst we agree that it's undemocratic, we can, by being tough round the negotiating table, get a different kind of Europe.
And how do you hold a group together that holds those disparate views?
Very straightforward, because we both want the same thing in the end. We just have a slightly different approach towards how we get there.
You want to knock down the temple, they just want to change the shape of it a bit.
I want the country from which I come to be engaged with our European neighbours on the basis of trade and cooperation, but not to be in a full political union, just as my, more moderate's the word that's used. I mean, I don't accept it, but that's the word that's used. Colleagues, they want the same thing, but they believe they can get it through renegotiation. Now, we both want the same thing. We both want a Europe of nation-states cooperating together, but not the kind of EU that we've got now.
Isn't this just xenophobia?
Oh, that's
dressed up.
Oh, that really is. I mean, when you think about political debate, and I see this in Britain, whenever the Labour Party is in trouble, as it is at the moment with trade unions, sort of rioting on picket lines, they play the race and xenophobia card. There's absolute baloney. I have personally, I've worked in international trade, I've worked for French banks, I'm married to a German woman, I'm a great Francophile, I adore France and French culture. I mean, I'm not anti-European, and nor is my party, and nor is my group in any way at all. In fact, I would argue that we're the pro-Europeans, because what's great about Europe is all the cultural diversity. What is repugnant is what we try and do in these repulsive buildings in taking away all those different national identities.
Well, let's have a look at something on your website. UKIP now, the UK party within the group, describes itself as, and I quote, a libertarian, non-racist party seeking Britain's withdrawal from the European Union.
That sounds reasonable, yes, okay.
You then go on the site to say, British jobs for British workers will only happen when Britain is run by and for Britons.
Well, of course.
A Britain run by and for Britons. If that's not xenophobia, what is?
You call it xenophobia, I call it democracy. I call it nation-states.
No, democracy is where people have the right to choose who they vote for.
Well, under this system, we don't have that choice, do we? Because whether I vote in the next general election for David Cameron or for Gordon Brown, I cannot change the fact that any foreign contractor can win a contract in the United Kingdom and can bring in workers from Latvia, Lithuania, or wherever else they choose, regardless of whether we have that, we have that skill base amongst the local people. So no, this isn't xenophobia, it's about democracy, it's about control, it's about running one's own affairs. And you know, one of the things that's enraged me in the last few weeks is people like Mandelson standing up and saying that I'm a protectionist. Crikey, I don't need lessons from him. When he was Trade Commissioner just before Christmas, he was putting taxes on candles, on bras, on Vietnamese shoes. We are not protectionists. We want to engage fully, fairly and freely with our neighbours in Europe.
So is it okay for a company to have an open tender and invite offers from other contractors in other countries to do a piece of work?
This is, of course, getting to the heart of competition and pricing, right, which is very, very important indeed. No question about that.
So, is it right?
And I come from a business background. Of course, I want to see competitive tendering. Not to have competitive tendering, to have sort of, you know, perhaps, let's say, the state, you know, providing the workforce for various... That
so
wouldn't be competitive.
So it's perfectly reasonable for a company to let out a contract to a subcontractor from another country.
But, if the job that has been tendered for successfully, if that job can be done by the skill base that exists within the local community, then we should not be in a position where European law says those people have no right, no entitlement to those jobs, but the contractor can bring in who they like.
Wait a minute. The company goes through a perfectly legal tender process.
To win a contract?
Yeah. And the contract is awarded.
Yep.
Now, the company which has awarded that contract has followed the rules completely. They've awarded the contract to the people who are best able to do the job, usually on the basis of quality and price and some combination.
And they've chosen their own labour.
That's called management. You're going to interfere in that?
Well, I can see the argument you're making. However, does it work the other way round? I mean, can you imagine if a British company won a contract in France and shipped in 300 of its own workers? I mean, there'd be riots on the streets. Not just a few pickets on...
Wait a minute. You're moving the ground here. My question was, is it reasonable for the company to do that? You agree that it is reasonable for the company to do that?
Free trade is about the free movement of capital, goods and services. It has never, ever, ever been about the free movement of labour as well. Never. Never in history. Even Milton Friedman, the high priest of free trade and free markets, said you cannot have the free movement of labour all the while there is a social security system. And the argument is this.
Surely the internal market is about the free movement of citizens.
Well, the internal market is a mistake. The internal market is a mistake. The European single market is a mistake. From a British perspective, what it has done, it has made us Eurocentric in our thinking, when in fact we're living in a global economy.
Right. So a Prime Minister, Farage, for example, in the United Kingdom, would say to an individual company, you stop employing foreigners right now. I don't care that you've signed a perfectly legal contract. But it is. It's exactly what you said. That is not the argument I'm making at all.
The argument I'm making is this, that of course we're very happy for plenty of foreign workers to be in Britain, just as we're happy for British people to work in foreign companies. By the way, not just European. You know, I'm not as small-minded as to think the world begins and ends with Europe. I'm talking about Australia, America, Canada, South Africa.
Otherwise, you retreat into protectionism.
But we should do it. No. Protectionism has never been about the free movement of labour. That is an absolute canard that has been put up by Mandelson and others like that. The argument is this. I'm not against foreign workers. I want Britain to have people with skills to come to it. I want foreign investment to come to Britain. But what I want us to do is not to have an open door. And what has happened in Immingham with this dispute is just a little example of a much greater problem that we've had since 2004, when we opened the doors to the entire of Eastern Europe. Over 1 million people have come to Britain, giving us a massive oversupply in the unskilled labour market.
This is saying that you can be a little bit pregnant. Either people can move abroad to find employment, or they can't.
That is absolute baloney. Listen, if I want to go work in America, it's quite simple. The ticket's very straightforward. I apply for and I get a work permit. That gives me the right to go and work there for 18 months or 2 years or whatever else it may be. After that time, I leave and return to where I've come from originally. That is the system that we're advocating for the United Kingdom, and that is the system that United Kingdom workers would quite happily operate in France or Spain or elsewhere.
Let's look at it.
If we don't do that, then what we've seen in Britain with this wave of industrial unrest may well turn into xenophobia and real unpleasantness. To find out more about who we are and what we stand for, go to the UK Independence Party website at www.ukip.org.